Story 1, The Scribbler. Part 1, The Camper on Cypress Lane. The last week of summer was supposed to be boring. 8-year-old Ellie Harper sat barefoot on the edge of her grandparents' white porch in Willow Creek, a wealthy suburban neighborhood where every house had its own imported mailbox and nobody ever locked their front door. Her older sister, Madison, 11 and self-appointed boss of everything, was spinning a ring pop on her finger like a diamond. Their mother had given them each $5 for candy and to learn how to walk together without fighting. It was supposed to be a little summer tradition, a walk to the Circle K gas station, 7 minutes away, for snacks and sodas before dinner. Madison was thrilled. Ellie wasn't. It wasn't the heat, though the California sun pressed down like a punishment, or the noise of sprinklers ticking across perfect lawns. It was the camper. It had been parked crookedly on Cypress Lane for 3 days now, halfway between the Harper's house and the Circle K. A silver camper van, older than anyone in the neighborhood remembered, with rust crawling up its sides and a back tire half deflated. No one ever saw anyone get in or out. But someone lived there. Ellie could feel it. The first time she noticed the drawing, she was walking with Madison past the camper, trying to look straight ahead. The drawing was taped to the door, fluttering slightly in the breeze, a piece of old sketch paper, torn at the edges, stained brown at the corners. It wasn't a kid's doodle. It was a fetus, a distorted, curled-up thing with bulging eyes and an open mouth frozen in a silent scream. The outlines were rough, drawn in something that wasn't quite pencil. The paper looked sticky. Ellie froze on the sidewalk. Madison noticed a second later. "You? That's gross," she said. "Come on, don't look at it." But Ellie couldn't stop. There was a signature at the bottom. Just a single letter, S, written backward. When they finally tore their eyes away and hurried past, Ellie glanced back over her shoulder. The camper door's curtain moved, just an inch, like someone had been watching and ducked away. That night, Ellie told her mother about the drawing. Her mother laughed, too tired to care. "It's probably some art student being weird," she said, brushing Ellie's hair. "Don't think about it." But the next morning, when the girls left for the Circle K again, Ellie saw a new detail, a second drawing, taped right next to the first. Same shape. Same fetus. But this time, the mouth was open wider, almost tearing the face apart. And in the bottom corner, written faintly, Day 2. That afternoon, the air felt heavier. Even the neighbors' dogs barked less. The girls walked faster past the camper. Ellie tried to stare at the ground. But she still saw the door move, just a crack, as if someone inside was listening. Madison tried to make it fun, swinging the candy bag on her wrist. "If he's some crazy guy, Mom will call the cops," she said confidently. "Nothing happens in Willow Creek." "Then why's he still here?" Ellie whispered. Madison didn't have an answer. The heat rose above 100 degrees Fahrenheit the next day. The camper was still there, baking under the sun. The drawings now covered almost half the door, maybe 5 of them, maybe 6. All the same fetus. But now, the mouth wasn't screaming. It was smiling. That was when Ellie realized something awful. Each drawing had a name underneath it. Names she recognized. Liam, Ava, Zoe, Noah. Kids who lived on their street. Kids her age. At the bottom of the last one, in shaky, fading letters, she saw, Ellie 8. She didn't tell Madison that part. She didn't tell anyone. Because when she looked back, she saw that the curtain in the camper window wasn't just moving. Someone's hand was pressed against it, thin, trembling fingers, leaving a dark print on the fabric. That night, Ellie didn't sleep. She sat up in bed, listening to the faraway hum of sprinklers and a faint, metallic noise that could have been wind, or something else. Every few seconds, she thought she heard a faint tapping sound. Like pencil on paper. Scratch. 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 She pulled the blanket over her head and waited for morning. On the 4th day, their mother dropped them off again with 5 crumpled dollars and a reminder, stay together. Don't take candy from anyone. The air shimmered with heat. Asphalt wobbled like liquid. Ellie clutched Madison's hand the entire way. The camper was still there, same spot, but the door was open. A small, steady creak of metal in the breeze. Inside, it was pure black. The smell was wrong, like rot, old paper, and something sour. Ellie froze. A shape moved inside, slow, heavy. Then came a sound, breathing. Wet, rasping, close. And then, a man stepped out. He was tall, his beard long and matted, crusted with something dark. He wore layer after layer of torn shirts, even though the heat shimmered around him. His skin was pale grey, like someone who hadn't seen daylight in years. His eyes were black, not just dark, black, like the pupil had eaten the iris. He stepped out of the camper, sniffing the air like a hound. His head tilted sharply toward the girls. Then his mouth twisted into a smile. "Hot day," he said hoarsely. Neither of them moved. Madison whispered, "Run." They turned and bolted down the street. Sandals slapping the pavement. Ellie dared one last look over her shoulder. The man was no longer limping. He had dropped the act. He was running, sprinting, arms pumping, head low, closing the distance at a speed that didn't make sense. "Run!" Madison screamed. They turned onto their grandparents' driveway. Ellie's lungs burned. Gravel flew behind them. The front door loomed ahead. They didn't close it. Didn't even think. Just crashed through, gasping, hiding behind the kitchen counter. Through the window, the street was empty again. The silver camper was still visible in the distance, but now, it was still. Perfectly still. That night, the camper was gone. By morning, there was nothing left but a dark rectangle of oil on the curb where it had been. Police searched the area. They found 13 drawings taped inside a nearby storm drain. All identical. Each with a child's name scrawled under it. Each stained brown at the corners. The last one read, Ellie Harper, age 8. Part 2, The Drawings Don't Stop. Willow Creek went quiet for 3 whole days after the camper vanished. No one said the word kidnapper, but everyone thought it. Police cruisers drifted through the neighborhood like sharks in still water, their lights silent but flashing blue over the white walls of million-dollar homes. Every parent walked their kids to the bus stop now. Even the mailman stopped at the end of driveways instead of coming up to doors. The Harper sisters didn't go to the Circle K anymore. At night, Ellie still heard it. That soft, scratching sound, faint, rhythmic, just below her window. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. She told Madison once. Madison said it was just tree branches. But Ellie knew the difference between the wind and someone drawing. The police came back on Thursday. 2 officers, one younger, one older, with a sunburned neck, asked Ellie and Madison to show them exactly where the camper had been. They brought them to the curb on Cypress Lane, where the dark oil stain still marked the pavement. Right here. Yes, Ellie whispered. The older cop squatted, running a finger along the curb. Strange, he muttered. Looks like the van didn't drive off. More like it was pushed. Madison frowned. By who? He didn't answer. The cops left. By dinner time, neighbors had already begun pulling their kids indoors. Curtains shut early. Dogs barked at nothing. At the Harper house, the sisters sat in the den, cartoons flickering soundlessly. Ellie was staring out the window again. The mailbox across the street looked strange, its flag was up, though no one had mail that late. She whispered, Madison. Her sister sighed. What? There's something. But before she could finish, a gust of wind slapped against the glass, and something white hit the window with a dull thud. Madison jumped. Ellie flinched back. Outside, a sheet of paper fluttered against the window pane, caught on a raindrop. When the wind shifted, it peeled away and drifted down to the porch. Madison went out first, annoyed but brave. Ellie followed, barefoot, the wood cold under her feet. The paper lay face down. Madison flipped it over. A drawing. The fetus again, same rough lines, same distorted body. But this one was smaller, almost shrunken, as if whoever drew it had pressed harder and harder until the paper tore. And this time, under the picture, the name written wasn't Ellie's. It was Madison Harper, 11. They didn't tell their mother. How do you explain something like that without sounding insane? Instead, Madison burned the paper in the sink, watching the flames curl through the wet spots. Ellie thought she heard a sound through the vent while it burned, faint, muffled, like laughter. That night, she dreamed of the camper door creaking open again. Only this time, something crawled out. By the weekend, Willow Creek's rumor mill had turned the camper story into legend. Kids said the man was an escaped mental patient, or a cult artist from the desert. Some whispered he was still hiding in someone's garage. Ellie didn't care what they called him. She called him what he was. The Scribbler. Because that's what he did. He drew, and then he came for the name he wrote. Sunday afternoon brought visitors, 2 detectives from San Jose PD. One showed their mother a photo, a blurred black and white still of the camper on traffic cameras the night it disappeared. It was parked outside a cemetery 3 miles away. No driver. The next frame, empty road. When the adults left the room, Madison whispered, "Maybe they'll find him." Ellie shook her head. "He's not gone." "How do you know?" Ellie hesitated. Then she reached under her bed, pulling out a folded piece of paper she hadn't shown anyone. It was the first drawing, the one she had torn off the camper door days ago when Madison wasn't looking. At the bottom corner, beneath the fetus and her own name, someone had added a new line in tiny letters. Still unfinished. That night, their grandparents came to stay for a few days. The house felt safer with more voices in it. But the scratching came back again, louder now, from under the floorboards instead of outside. Scratch. 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 Then a pause. Then, 3 hard knocks. Ellie sat upright in bed, heart thudding. "Madison," she whispered. Her sister didn't answer. The knocks came again, not from the window, not from the door. From under the bed. She climbed out slowly, every instinct screaming not to. The air felt heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath. She knelt down, lifted the blanket edge. Nothing. Just darkness and a faint smell, like rusted metal and wet paper. When she looked closer, her eyes caught a reflection. A pair of eyes stared back, small, black, unblinking. Ellie screamed. The adults came running, turning on every light. Nothing there. But when her grandfather checked under the bed, he pulled out a single sheet of paper. Wet. Torn. Drawn on both sides. One side, another fetus. The other side, a rough sketch of the Harper house, windows numbered, one circled in red, Ellie's room. The police returned again the next morning. They dusted for prints, found nothing. No footprints outside, no sign of forced entry. Their mother was pale and shaking when they left. She told them to pack bags. They were going to stay with cousins in Santa Rosa for a week. By afternoon, they were gone. Willow Creek looked peaceful again after that. Empty lawns, trimmed hedges, quiet. But a week later, the gardener trimming hedges near Cypress Lane called 911. He'd found something buried in the flower bed where the camper used to sit. A notebook. It was wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, sealed with duct tape. Inside, 13 drawings, identical to the ones police had collected before, each fetus signed with a backward S. Except the last page. The last page was blank. Only a single phrase written at the bottom. When the name is drawn, the door will open. That night, miles away in Santa Rosa, Ellie woke from a nightmare of the same words being whispered through her pillow. She turned toward the window. Outside, parked beneath the streetlight, barely visible behind the glare, was a silver camper. The door was closed. But taped to it was a single new drawing. The fetus was smiling again. And under it, written in pencil so faint she could barely read it, were 5 new letters forming her sister's name. Madison. Part 3, the last drawing. The house in Santa Rosa was supposed to be safe. It sat on a quiet cul-de-sac behind a stretch of vineyards, all green and gold under the late summer sun. A rental. Temporary. A place to breathe. But by the second night, Madison already hated it. The windows were too big. The walls too thin. And Ellie kept staring at the driveway like she was waiting for something to arrive. Their mother was trying her best, baking, over-explaining, pretending to read the same page of a magazine for hours. "It's just for a few days," she'd said. "New house, new start." But every night, the same thing happened. At exactly 3:07 a.m., Ellie would wake up. Not from noise. From silence. That particular silence, the kind that presses against the ears, too still, too aware. One night, she couldn't take it anymore. She slid out of bed and crept toward the window. Nothing. Just a faint outline of the streetlight outside. But as she turned to go back to bed, a soft rustle broke the quiet. Paper. Something was sliding under the front door. By morning, she thought maybe it had been a dream, until she saw the envelope on the doormat. Her name written on it in neat, tiny capitals. Inside, another drawing. Same fetus. Mouth wide open. Only this time, a small hand had been added next to it, gripping what looked like a pencil. Underneath, day 14. She didn't show Madison. Not yet. She folded the paper, hid it under her mattress, and tried to convince herself it meant nothing. But the following night, there was another envelope. Then another. By the fourth morning, Madison found them all, 10 folded papers stuffed behind Ellie's pillow. She spread them across the bed, each one darker, shakier, the fetus growing smaller, its eyes blacker. And then she saw the last one. At the bottom corner, faint but legible. "It's almost finished." Madison looked at her sister. "Ellie, where did these come from?" Ellie's voice cracked. "He's outside again." They told their mother. She didn't believe them, not really. Not until the night the lights went out. It happened without warning, every lamp, every bulb, gone in the same breath. The house plunged into black. Their mother grabbed her phone. No signal. Then, from the backyard, came a familiar metallic creak, like a door slowly opening. Madison ran to the window. The silver camper sat behind the house. Parked perfectly still, tail lights off, no sound at all. Their mother dialed 911, voice trembling. "Someone's here. He followed us from San Jose. He's outside." Static answered. Then silence. In the dark, Ellie's small hand found her sister's. "His finished drawing," she whispered. The first knock came from the back door. Slow. Measured. Not pounding, tapping. Like pencil on wood. Then a man's voice muffled through the wall. "Ellie," it said gently. "Come look. I fixed it." Madison yanked her sister toward the hallway, shouting for their mother. But as they reached the stairs, a dim orange glow flickered from outside. Through the front window, they could see the camper door hanging open. Light spilled from inside, faint and flickering. And on the side panel of the van, drawings. Hundreds of them, taped edge to edge, fluttering in the wind. Every single one bore a name from Willow Creek. They ran for the garage. The smell hit first, metallic, sharp, like pennies soaked in water. In the beam of a flashlight, Madison froze. The walls were covered in paper. Drawings, identical to the others, taped over the shelves, the tools, the freezer. Each one signed with the backward S. And in the center of the room, a large, unfinished sketch taped to the wall, drawn in something darker than pencil. The fetus again, smaller this time, and beside it, two silhouettes. Both labeled Harper. The back door creaked open. Footsteps, slow, dragging. Their mother shouted from upstairs, voice breaking, "Get out! Run!" The girls bolted through the side door into the yard. The camper stood open, the interior flickering with candlelight. Papers swayed like feathers in the wind. Ellie stopped. Something inside the van was moving. "Ellie, no!" Madison hissed, pulling her. But Ellie stepped forward anyway, her voice trembling. "You said you fixed it," she whispered into the dark. A shadow shifted inside. Then, the scribbler emerged. His beard clumped with sweat and dried paint. His layered shirts hung off him like old curtains. In one hand, he held a clipboard covered in paper. "See," he rasped, voice almost childlike. "All finished now." He turned the page toward her. It wasn't a fetus this time. It was Ellie, small figure, standing at a window. Behind her, a tall shadow. He smiled, tilting his head. "You looked wrong before. Needed to fix the eyes." Madison grabbed her sister and ran. The man's footsteps dragged behind them, then quickened, heavy, pounding. They tore across the yard, tripping through grass and gravel. Headlights from a neighbor's SUV flashed across the fence, and in that instant, the scribbler vanished. By the time police arrived, the camper was burning. No sign of the man inside. The flames licked through sheets of paper, the drawings curling into black ash. When the fire died down, investigators found one object still intact amid the wreckage. A single clipboard, half melted, with one page left untouched. On it, a small child sketch of two girls standing beside a camper, drawn in graphite. At the bottom corner, next to the backward S, were 5 faint words. "Not my hand this time." Weeks passed. Willow Creek moved on. Reporters left. The police never found the scribbler. The Harpers went home, repainting the porch, fixing the locks, pretending normalcy could be rebuilt. But some nights, when the wind came from the west, Ellie swore she could smell it again. That faint, metallic scent of paper and heat. And sometimes, in her sketchbook, she found drawings she didn't remember starting. Shaky, smudged, half erased. Always of the same thing. A silver camper. A window curtain. And a dark shape just behind it, holding a pencil that never stops moving. Story 2, The Bell Ringer. Part 1, The Sound Between the Trees. The rain in Oregon doesn't fall, it lingers. It seeps into everything, turning bark soft and dirt into memory. For Jasper Kane, it was home. He'd grown up near Mirror Lake, the glassy man-made reservoir that glimmered at the edge of Blackwood Forest, where his father worked as a ranger before retiring. To Jasper, every trail was familiar, every clearing had a story. That's why, when he came back after his first year of college, he didn't think twice about hiking alone. It was late June, sky overcast, the kind of day when the air feels suspended. He was 2 miles from the main road, just following muscle memory, his old loop along the stream, past the fallen pine with initials carved by kids decades ago. The forest hummed softly with wind. No birdsong, though. Not lately. He noticed that, too late. The first sound came faintly, a single bell, distant, metallic, and oddly steady. Not wind chimes. Not cattle. Just one, deep ding, echoing through the trees, 7 seconds apart. He stopped, listening. Ding. He timed it. Counted to 7. Ding. It was too deliberate, too even. Almost like breathing. Curiosity was stronger than fear. Jasper followed the sound off-trail, through mud and tangled roots. His boots sank deep, water seeped through the seams. The forest darkened. The bell grew louder. Then, at the base of a cedar, he found it. A fox, or what was left of one. Its body lay stiff on the ground, throat dark and clean-cut. Its head had been reattached backward, the fur stitched crudely with thin steel wire. Jasper gagged, stumbling back. The bell chimed again, this time closer. He turned in a slow circle, scanning tree trunks. Nothing moved. Then he saw it, a glint of metal behind a log. A small brass bell, hanging from a low branch, tied with twine, swaying gently. He stepped closer, realizing it wasn't an ornament. It was old, green with oxidation, engraved faintly with a name, R. Colby. Jasper pulled out his phone to take a photo, No signal, but that didn't matter. He snapped a shot anyway, zooming in. When he looked at the image, something shifted in his stomach. Behind the tree, barely visible in the blur, was a figure. Tall. Hooded. Watching. He spun around. No one. The bell swayed once more, softly. Ding. He ran. Branches whipped across his face. The forest tilted, sound distorting between echoes of rain and his own breath. He tripped, catching himself against a root, and that's when he noticed it again. No birds, no insects, no noise except his own panting. And far behind him, the bell. Ding. By the time he made it back to the trailhead, the sound had stopped. The world snapped back into color. A crow cawed. Water dripped from the trees. He tried to laugh it off, shaking mud from his boots, but his hands wouldn't stop trembling. Back at home, his dad glanced up from the kitchen table. Caught in the rain. Yeah, Jasper muttered, dropping his pack. Heard something weird. Like bells. His dad frowned. Not near the old Colby Ridge. Maybe, Jasper said, sitting down. Why? His father didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly. They found a ranger there once. In '03. Same sound. Bell tied to his wrist. Jasper didn't sleep well that night. Rain ticked against his window, rhythm uneven. Every few minutes, he thought he heard it again, low and far off. When he finally drifted off, his phone buzzed once on the nightstand. He didn't check it until morning. A notification from his photo app. New face detected. He opened the image of the bell. The app had drawn a yellow square around the blurred figure behind the tree. And below, the system's best guess for identity. No face detected. Possible object, mask. By afternoon, Jasper convinced himself it was a trick of the light. He deleted the photo and decided to go back. He needed proof that it was nothing. So he went. Same trail. Same silence. But when he reached the cedar, the bell was gone. In its place, tied to the branch, was a strip of wet fabric. A piece of raincoat. Torn. He was about to turn back when the wind shifted. Ding. He froze. It came from deeper in the forest. He checked his watch. 7 seconds later, ding. He started walking, slow, careful. Every sound now mirrored the rhythm of the bell, footsteps, heartbeat, breath. All in sync. And then he saw it. Hanging from a tree 20 feet ahead, another bell, larger, older. This one had a name, too. See, Hale. Below it, nailed into the trunk, a small square of paper with words scratched in pencil. Turn back, Jasper. He stumbled backward, almost tripping over roots. The forest had gone utterly still. He whispered to himself, who the hell? Then stopped. From somewhere to his right, just behind the next line of trees, came a wet, dragging step. Then another. He turned, heart hammering, scanning the dim forest. Something tall shifted between the trunks, a silhouette, hunched, over 2 meters high, wrapped in a tattered coat. Each movement made a faint metallic rattle, like tiny bells brushing together. Jasper froze, then did the only thing his body would allow, he ran. He didn't stop until the trees broke into open ground. His lungs ached. His shirt clung to his chest. He turned back once, expecting to see someone following. But the forest was empty. And from deep within the trees, one final ding echoed, slower this time. Almost disappointed. That night, as rain beat against the roof, Jasper's father knocked on his door. You went back there again, didn't you? He said quietly. Jasper didn't answer. His father sighed. There's something you should see. He placed an old ranger's logbook on the desk, flipping to a yellowed page from March 2003. Patrol 7 missing. Last heard describing a bell sound every 7 seconds. Search turned up abandoned gear near Mirror Lake. Recovered a brass bell marked C. Hale. And beneath that note, in shaky handwriting, another line added years later, in pen. Never respond to the bell. Jasper looked up. Dad, you wrote that, didn't you? His father didn't deny it. He just stared at the rain-streaked window, face pale. Some sounds aren't calling for you, he said. They are calling through you. Outside, the wind shifted again. A branch tapped the glass. Then, faintly, almost gentle, came a sound neither of them could mistake. Ding. Part 2, The Man Who Walks with Bells. By the next morning, Jasper couldn't tell whether the bell had really rung the night before or if it was just his nerves translating rain into rhythm. He went through the motions, coffee, checking email, pretending to study for his fall semester return, but his head kept jerking toward the window. The forest was right there beyond the tree line, and it felt like it was watching back. His dad left for town just after 9. Don't go out there again, he'd said, holding Jasper's stare for a second too long. Promise. I won't, Jasper lied. He made it until late afternoon before the pull started again. Curiosity mixed with a strange guilt, like something unfinished needed tending. He packed a flashlight, water bottle, pocket knife. This time he didn't take his phone. By 5:40 p.m., grey clouds had collapsed into low fog. The forest smelled of wet pine and iron. He took the same route, down past the split trail, across the shallow stream, into the quiet section where moss muffled every step. The world seemed made of one color, green gone gray. The first ding came just as the fog thickened. Faint, but closer than before. He stopped, counting silently. 7 seconds. Ding. Then 7 more. Ding. He whispered to himself, it's not real. But his breath came out shaky. Another bell answered, from a different direction, higher pitch, quicker rhythm. Like a conversation in metal. The light dimmed faster than expected. He turned on his flashlight. It's been caught something hanging from a low branch, a string of bells, old brass, each the size of a thumb. They weren't decorative. Every surface was engraved with letters. Names. He leaned closer, reading. L. Anders. C. Hale. R. Colby. He swallowed hard. All names from the ranger logs his father had mentioned. As he traced one of the engravings, the beam of his flashlight flickered over something else behind the tree. A face. He stumbled backward, light shaking wildly. It wasn't a mask, it wasn't quite a face either, just a dark head-shaped silhouette in the fog. The height wrong. The shoulders hunched. The figure moved one slow step forward, and the bells on its chest chimed softly. Ding. Jasper's flashlight died. He ran blindly, branches clawing his arms. Behind him, the rhythm of metal followed, deliberate, steady. He veered downhill, toward the stream, his only landmark, but misjudged the slope. The ground vanished under him. He tumbled through mud, slammed shoulder first into rock, slid into freezing water. The shock of cold pulled him back into focus. He gasped, pushing himself up, flashlight clattering uselessly downstream. Above the roar of water, he heard it again. The bell. Closer now. Ding. He crouched behind a boulder, hard hammering, trying to make sense of the shape on the opposite bank. It stood impossibly tall, head grazing the low canopy, wrapped in a raincoat torn to ribbons, hundreds of bells hanging like ornaments from its front and sleeves. When the wind moved, they all rang faintly, discordant, dozens of voices out of sync. Jasper tried not to breathe. But the figure wasn't searching. It was listening. Every few seconds it tilted its head, as if tasting the air. Lightning flashed. For a split second, he saw the face under the hood, grey skin, hollow eyes, no mouth. Just a stitch line, like something sewn shut. Then darkness again. Jasper bolted. He splashed through the stream, boots slipping on slick stone, half climbing, half crawling up the opposite embankment. The bells didn't chase. They just followed, slowly, deliberately, one step every 7 seconds. He ran until he saw the forest open into the service road. His chest burned. He could see headlights in the distance. A truck engine idled. "Dad," he yelled, waving his arms. The old Ford roared to life, tires spinning mud. His father jumped out, rifle in hand. "What happened?" Jasper tried to speak but could only point back into the trees. Nothing there now. Just fog. They stood still, listening. Then, faintly, so faintly it might have been the wind, came a single ding. His father's expression changed. Not confusion. Recognition. He raised the rifle and fired once into the dark. The sound echoed through the valley like thunder. And then, silence. Back at the house, Jasper wrapped in a blanket, shaking uncontrollably. His father sat across from him, loading another round. His hands didn't tremble, but his jaw was tight. "You said it was gone," Jasper whispered. "I said we stopped hearing it," his father answered. "That's not the same." "What is it?" He didn't look up. "Something that calls its own name." The storm hit around midnight. Rain hammered the roof so hard the gutters screamed. The house lights flickered, then steadied. Jasper sat awake, listening. Every few minutes, thunder covered everything else, but between crashes, he heard it. Faint, metallic. Ding. He stood, walking slowly to the window. Across the driveway, under the fir trees, something shimmered. A bell hanging from the mailbox flag. He opened the door before thinking, rain soaking his clothes. The bell swung gently, tied with twine. He stepped closer. His name was carved into the side. Jasper Kane, 19. His father's voice boomed from behind him. "Don't touch it." Jasper froze. Before he could step away, the wind gusted and the bell struck the post once. Ding. Inside the house, every other bell, wind chime, kitchen timer, even the phone alarm, rang once in perfect unison. And then the power went out. They spent the rest of the night barricaded in the den, rifle ready, candles guttering. Nothing came. No knocks, no sound except rain. When dawn finally broke, they searched the yard. The bell was gone. Only the string remained. But the mailbox flag was still upright, pointing to a folded note wedged inside. "Turn wrong way. Wrong bell." Later that day, police swept the woods again. They found fresh footprints near the creek, bare, large, deeper than human weight should allow. They followed them to a small clearing that hadn't existed on any map. At its center stood a cabin. It was built from rough timber, nearly invisible under moss and vines. Inside, nothing alive. Just 73 bells, arranged on the floor in perfect rows. Each engraved with a name. Each identical in make. The last one, hanging from the rafters, bore new etching marks, unfinished. It read, Jasper, 19. That night, back at the house, Jasper couldn't sleep. His father kept a bell on the kitchen counter, the one he'd confiscated from the mailbox, locked in a glass jar. He said it was for protection. It can't call if it's sealed. At 2:14 a.m., Jasper got up to get water. The jar was empty. The bell was gone. And in its place, written in fog on the window pane, were 3 words. "You heard wrong. Part 3, the 74th bell." The following evening came too quietly. After the storm, the forest seemed exhausted, branches heavy, air thick, the ground steamed where sun touched puddles. Jasper sat on the porch, boots still wet from the day before, staring at the tree line. Somewhere out there, a jar had opened and a bell had gone missing. His father had gone to town to file another report. "Stay inside," he'd said again. It was always stay inside. Jasper waited until the truck sound faded down the gravel road. Then he stood. The woods behind the house felt different in daylight, washed clean, drained of color. The usual animal chatter was gone again. He followed the old path toward Mirror Lake, a flashlight in his pocket though it was barely 5 p.m. At the spot where he had fallen into the stream, he found prints in the mud. Large, toe-less, as if made by boots with no soles. Every few feet, the impression of something circular beside them, tiny dents in patterns of 7 bells. He followed the tracks deeper until he saw a shimmer through the trees, the cabin. Police tape flapped in the breeze, torn. Inside, the rows of bells were gone. The floor was bare except for a single brass one in the middle of the room. Tied to its handle was a piece of lined paper. When you hear your own name, stop running. Jasper's throat tightened. The forest behind him creaked, then settled. Somewhere beyond the trees, something metallic stirred. Ding! He backed toward the door, every instinct screaming to run. Then another ding, this time softer, higher, from a different direction. 7 seconds later, a third. The sound surrounded him, weaving through trunks, circling. He started forward, forcing his way through brambles until he reached the clearing above the lake. A fog had rolled in, thick, low, glowing faintly gold as sunlight diffused through it. The surface of the lake was perfectly still. And standing in the shallows, half submerged, was a shape. The bell ringer. Coat dripping, bells clinging to the fabric like barnacles. It faced away, arms limp, head bowed. Every slow breath made the bells at its chest tremble. Jasper whispered, "What do you want?" The head tilted, as if listening. Then it raised one arm and pointed toward the trees behind him. There, hanging from a branch, was another bell, smaller, newer, shining. He stepped closer and saw his father's name engraved across it. Michael Caine. Jasper spun back toward the water. The figure was gone. A sound rippled through the fog, not quite footsteps, not quite ringing, something between. He ran. Downhill, through brush, toward the road. Branches snapped underfoot. When he broke through the tree line, he stopped dead. The truck was back in the drive. His father's door open. No one inside. But on the hood, glinting under the last light, lay the missing jar, empty again, and beside it a note written in dirt streaked handwriting. Bell number 73 returned. He searched the house room by room. "Dad," he shouted, voice cracking. Only echoes. From the hallway came a faint, rhythmic ticking. Not a clock. Not rain. He followed it to the basement door. Each step downward deepened the sound. When he reached the bottom, the flashlight beam caught movement, strings of brass bells hanging from the ceiling pipes, hundreds of them, swaying in still air. And at the far wall, his father stood motionless, facing a workbench. "Dad?" Jasper whispered. The older man turned slowly, eyes open but unfocused, mouth sealed by a single wire looped crudely across his lips. Around his neck hung a bell. The one marked Seat Hale, the ranger who'd disappeared 20 years earlier. Jasper stumbled backward. His father raised a trembling hand, pointing to the bench. Laid across it were 2 unmarked bells and a chisel. One of them was still warm from engraving. It read Michael Caine, 73. The other was blank. The floor vibrated faintly, as if something massive were moving beneath it. Then the hanging bells began to sway without wind, striking one another in slow rhythm. Ding. 7 seconds. Ding. From the shadows behind the furnace, the tall figure unfolded, raincoat slick, bells whispering. It moved no faster than before, but each step seemed to erase distance. When it reached the edge of light, Jasper could see the places where the coat was sewn together with human hair, the holes where other bells had once hung. It reached out a grey hand, palm upward. At its center rested the blank bell. "Take it," a voice said. Not from the creature, from everywhere at once. Each bell vibrated the word, thousands of metallic whispers. Jasper shook his head. "I won't." The hand stayed extended. The whispering rose, "Take it. Take it." He grabbed the chisel from the bench instead and swung. Metal met metal, the blow knocked the bell from its palm. A sound like thunder filled the basement as every other bell rang in unison, deafening. The figure stepped back into the dark, and vanished. When the noise died, his father collapsed. The wire across his mouth snapped, he gasped, eyes clearing for a moment. "Don't finish it," he whispered. Then the bell stilled. They left Blackwood that night. Police returned again days later, found the cabin gone, as if it had never existed. Only the clearing remained, and a single bell lying in the mud. It bore no name, but the number 74 had been scratched into its rim. Months passed. Jasper enrolled in a new school out of state. He stopped telling the story. Stopped hiking. But some nights, when a train passed in the distance, the sound of its crossing bell made his chest seize. He kept one bell, hidden in a drawer, the one he had struck from the creature's hand. He never touched it. Until the morning he woke to find it sitting on his desk, clean, polished, and newly engraved. Jasper Kane, 74. He doesn't know who put it there, or why the ringing now comes only when he closes his eyes. But sometimes, between sleep and waking, he hears a soft voice, his father's, maybe, counting seconds in the dark. 5, 6, 7. Then a single, perfect chime. Ding. Story 3, Victor Crane. Part 1, The Man Who Knew Too Much. Tone, psychological horror grounded in realism, an intimate, small-town story where obsession replaces the supernatural. This section, almost equal to 1,500 words, builds the relationship between Lillian Brooks, her daughter Harper, and the quiet, unbreakable presence of Victor Crane. Ashwood, Ohio, was the kind of town that pretended nothing bad could ever happen. Bakeries opened before dawn. Church bells still rang on Sundays. The same people bought the same pies every week. For 30 years, Lillian Brooks had stood behind the counter of her bakery, Sweet Haven, kneading dough, frosting cupcakes, and remembering a life that used to feel bigger. When her husband, Tom, died that winter, she didn't stop working. Habit was the only thing keeping her upright. Her daughter, Harper, called every few days from Columbus. "Mom, close early once in a while. Rest." Lillian would smile, say, "Of course," and keep baking until the ovens went cold. The first time Victor Crane walked in, it was raining. He was polite, middle-aged, a bit too clean-cut for Ashwood, pressed jacket, wedding ring that caught the light when he tapped the counter. "Chocolate glazed, please," he said. "And one cinnamon twist for luck." He asked her name, complimented the smell of the shop, left a $10 bill for a $5 purchase. She thought little of it. Small talk, customer courtesy. When he came back the next day, she remembered him only by the way he said luck, like it wasn't a joke. Weeks passed. Victor became part of the background. Always the same, polite, quiet, watching her work while the bell over the door jingled softly. Once, he mentioned knowing her husband, Tom Brooks, right? "We met years ago, construction site near Cleveland." Lillian smiled, nodding. People in small towns had strange memories. She didn't notice at first that he never touched his pastries. He'd buy them, hold them in the paper bag, talk for a while, then leave. After Tom's funeral, Victor didn't come for a few weeks. When he finally did, he was different. No wedding ring. Eyes red, voice shaking. "Lost my wife," he said, setting a coffee on the counter. "Paperwork, lawyers. It's exhausting, isn't it? All that grief with nowhere to put it." Lillian offered polite condolences, heart heavy for him. He smiled faintly. "At least you understand." That was the day she should have realized she was being chosen. The first strange thing arrived 3 weeks later, a small bouquet of daisies left on the bakery step before opening. No card, no wrapping. She assumed it was from a regular customer, tossed them into the back sink, and forgot. The next morning, another bouquet, this one wrapped in newspaper. And tucked inside the stems, a folded note. "You look smaller when you're sad." No signature. Lillian showed it to Harper over the phone. Her daughter laughed it off. "Creepy, sure, but probably harmless. Someone's flirting, Mom. You've still got it." That night, Lillian found herself rereading the line. The handwriting was precise. Mail. Familiar somehow. She went to bed uneasy, blinds drawn. At 3:07 a.m., Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it. The screen lit again, then again, 4 times, 5, 6. By the 7th, she answered, half asleep. Hello? Silence. Then a man's breath on the line. Finally, a whisper. You shouldn't sleep near windows. She hung up, heart racing. In the stillness afterward, she heard faint static from the other end, then a soft click, like a photo being taken. She turned toward the window, but the curtains were already closed. Still, she felt it, the sense of someone standing on the other side of the glass. She called Harper the next morning. Mom, that's not normal. Change the locks. Call the cops. I don't want to make trouble, Lillian said, forcing a laugh. It's probably kids. Harper paused. Kids don't know your number. 2 days later, the police arrived after a tip from an anonymous caller claiming there was a disturbance at Sweet Haven. Lillian blinked at the officer in confusion. She hadn't called anyone. He said the caller described a woman crying by the back door. Lillian's hands trembled. Whoever it wasn't me. He nodded, glancing toward the rear of the bakery. Mind if I check anyway? He pushed open the back door. Something small fell from the lintel and hit the ground with a dull clack. A camera, no bigger than a button. Lillian froze. They found 2 more hidden behind the register and 1 above the bathroom vent. No fingerprints. No obvious wiring. The officer frowned. Could be remote upload. New tech, small battery. Someone's watching, not recording. Lillian felt sick. Watching, for how long? He shrugged. Hard to say. That evening, she locked the doors early. She poured herself tea and sat in the dim kitchen, lights off, unable to shake the feeling of being observed. The air conditioner clicked. Then, from the back porch, a faint scrape, metal against wood. Her breath caught. She stood, crept to the window. Something glinted in the flower pot outside. She opened the door slowly, peered down. Inside the pot, half buried in soil, was another camera. And beneath it, a note written on the back of a bakery receipt. Don't hide from me. I'm on your side. The police took another report. Harper drove in from Columbus, furious. Mom, this is stalking. This is serious. You're calling the landlord and changing the locks tonight. I can't, Lillian said softly. He probably has keys. He? Who's he, Mom? Lillian hesitated. She wanted to say the name, but speaking it felt like acknowledging the connection, like giving it power. Still, she whispered it. Victor. Harper called the police again herself. The dispatcher sighed audibly. We'll note it, but without direct threats or trespassing, there's not much to pursue. Harper slammed the phone down. They won't help. So we'll handle it ourselves. That night, they installed cheap motion lights, extra locks, and a door chime. It wasn't much, but it gave them a fragile illusion of control. For 3 nights, nothing happened. On the 4th, the power went out. Darkness flooded the house. The door chime rang once, ting. Harper grabbed a flashlight, whispered, "Stay here," and crept down the hall. Through the narrow beam of light, she saw something taped to the front door. A small envelope. Her name written on it. She tore it open. Inside, a photo of her mother sleeping, time-stamped 3:03 a.m., taken through the bedroom window. Outside, something shifted. A silhouette at the edge of the yard, watching quietly. No movement. No sound. Then the whisper came again, just above the wind, familiar, patient, amused. You don't lock windows in this town. Harper slammed the door, locked it, and backed away. The flashlight trembled in her hand. Upstairs, Lillian whispered from the landing, "Who is it?" Harper didn't answer. Because deep down, she already knew. And for the first time, she understood this wasn't about love, or grief, or chance. It was about ownership. Part 2, Green Day approaches. For a few days after the night of the envelope, things almost returned to normal. Harper stayed another week in Ashwood, sleeping on the couch, helping her mother reinstall new locks and security lights. They tried to laugh, to fill the air with something other than fear. But fear was patient. It found new doors. On Wednesday morning, the phone rang while Lillian was frosting a cake. She wiped her hands on her apron and picked up. Sweet Haven Bakery. Silence. Then, "Hi, Lillian." She froze. The voice was low, conversational, too intimate to be mistaken for a stranger. "You sound better," the man said. "Less tired." "I was worried." She slammed the phone down, breath ragged. It rang again immediately. Harper snatched the receiver, shouting, "Who is this?" But the line was dead. The next day, the bakery's Wi-Fi cut out. Harper reset the router twice. When she checked the network list, one name stood out among the neighbor connections. Crane_home_CAM. Her throat went dry. "Mom, he's spoofing you. He's still watching." They unplugged everything, closed the shop early, drove to the hardware store for more cameras and motion sensors. But no amount of hardware could outsmart obsession. By evening, a new package waited on the porch, an unmarked brown box. No return address. No postage. He delivered it himself. Harper opened it on the counter, hands shaking. Inside, a single Polaroid of Lillian, taken through the window again, same angle as before. Underneath, in black marker, "Smile, you're on camera." There was also a small velvet box. Lillian opened it and gasped. Inside lay her husband's wedding ring. The one she'd buried him with. She called the police, voice breaking, but they were careful with their words. "No proof it's the same ring," the officer said over the line. "Burial records confirm a closed casket. It's possible he bought a duplicate." "He didn't," she shouted. "It's his. Look, he carved our initials inside." The officer sighed. "Without physical evidence of trespass, it's a civil matter." Harper grabbed the phone. "Civil? He's sending us body parts?" "It's a ring, miss." The call disconnected. That night, Harper nailed the windows shut. Lillian baked through her nerves, bread, muffins, anything to drown the silence with the rhythm of her hands. But at 11:40 p.m., the oven timer dinged and something about the sound made her look toward the front window. A faint green glow shimmered on the glass. She stepped closer. Outside, at the edge of the streetlight, stood Victor Crane. No disguise. No fear. Just standing, head slightly tilted, as if posing for a photograph. In his hand, he held a small Irish flag. She screamed for Harper. By the time her daughter ran to the window, he was gone. They called the police again, but by the time the cruiser arrived, the street was empty. The officer took down their statement, weary. "It's St. Patrick's Day weekend. Lot of drunks out there. Could be a prank." Harper nearly snapped. "He's been watching her for months. You think he's doing this for a laugh?" The officer scribbled something and shrugged. "We'll patrol the area tonight. Keep your doors locked." Then he left. The next morning, the bakery doorbell jingled at opening time. Lillian turned from the counter and froze. Victor stood in the doorway, smiling softly, a small bouquet of green carnations in his hand. "Happy early St. Paddy's," he said. He looked thinner, paler, eyes ringed in sleepless grey. Lillian's mouth went dry. "You need to leave. Just wanted to check on you. You've been ignoring my calls." Harper emerged from the kitchen, phone in hand. "Step outside now, or I call the cops." Victor's expression didn't change. He simply set the flowers on the counter, adjusted his sleeve, and said, "They won't come this time." Then he left. By noon, Harper had packed a bag for her mother. "We're going to a hotel," she said. "You're not spending the weekend here." But when they reached the car, something was wedged under the wiper blade, a folded piece of paper. Lillian unfolded it. Her breath caught. "You owe me one night. You took mine." Harper snatched it and stuffed it into her pocket before her mother could read more. They drove to the Ashwood Inn, checked into a small upstairs room, and kept the curtains drawn. Saturday passed in uneasy quiet. Harper kept the TV on for noise. Lillian sat by the window, eyes distant. At midnight, someone slipped something under the door. Harper grabbed it before her mother could move. A green envelope, sealed with wax. Inside was a printed letter, formal, almost businesslike. "I've given everything. I'm done pretending you weren't part of it. Call before March 17th, or I'll come collect what's owed." Below the text, a printed timestamp and GPS coordinates. Harper pulled up the location on her phone. It marked the exact address of their house. They didn't sleep. At 2 a.m., footsteps echoed outside in the hallway. Someone stopped by their door. A faint scrape, metal on metal. Then silence. Harper peeked through the peephole. Empty corridor. When she looked down again, another envelope waited at the threshold. Smaller. Torn. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a single full-leaf clover, pressed flat. Sunday morning, Harper convinced her mother to go to church, somewhere public, visible. The pews were full of green clothes, laughter, the small-town hum of celebration. For the first time in weeks, Lillian relaxed. Until she opened her hymnal. Tucked between the pages was a photograph of the two of them walking into the church, taken only minutes earlier. She didn't scream. She just folded the picture in half and kept singing. That evening, they returned home under police escort. The door was unlocked, though Harper swore she'd bolted it. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed, except the kitchen table. On it sat a small gift box, perfectly wrapped, tied with green ribbon. Harper wanted to throw it away, but Lillian couldn't look away. She untied the ribbon. Lifted the lid. Inside lay her husband's wedding ring again, and a second one, identical, only smaller. A note beneath read, "You lost yours. I made you mine." The police came again, took photographs, promised to escalate the case. They didn't say how long that would take. After they left, Harper checked every lock, every closet, every light. Finally, she turned to her mother. "We'll leave tomorrow. New state. I'll handle it." Lillian nodded, though she looked dazed, like a woman underwater. That night, Harper fell asleep on the couch, phone in hand. At 3 a.m., the doorbell rang. Once. Twice. 22 times. By the 22nd, it stopped. Morning light spilled through the curtains. Harper opened the front door. On the porch sat a single box, the same green ribbon. She opened it with a kitchen knife, half expecting another ring. Instead, she found a letter typed neatly, stapled to a photograph. The letter read, "You never called. Call before midnight, or I'll come collect." The photograph showed the two of them asleep in their beds, last night's timestamp in the corner. Part 3, still green, still waiting. By the evening of March 17th, Ashwood was painted green. Paper shamrocks fluttered in the wind. Teenagers in plastic beads staggered out of bars. For everyone else, it was celebration. For Lillian and Harper Brooks, it was countdown. They hadn't slept since the letter. Every door was locked, every curtain drawn. The motion lights outside flickered whenever a car passed. Harper sat on the couch with a baseball bat across her knees, her phone open to 911. Her mother stared at the clock. 8:42 p.m. 3 hours until midnight. "Mom, we should go," Harper said quietly. "Right now. Just drive. Doesn't matter where." Lillian didn't move. Her hands clutched a rosary, knuckles white. "He'll follow," she said simply. "He always finds the address." The house creaked as the furnace kicked on. Harper flinched. Every noise was an omen now. Then came a thump from the porch. They froze. Another thump. Something sliding slowly against the door. Harper stood, motioning for her mother to stay back. She crept to the peephole. A small cardboard box sat on the mat. Green ribbon. She didn't touch it. Instead, she whispered, "He's here." Lillian's voice cracked. "Call the police." Harper dialed. Rings. Static. No answer. The line dropped. No signal. She looked back through the peephole. The box was gone. 9:07 p.m. A faint knock, polite, almost friendly. "Lillian?" A man's voice muffled through the wood. "You never called." Her mother's breath caught. "Victor, please, leave us alone." The voice sighed. "I came all this way. Don't make me stand in the cold." Harper shouted, "Get off our property. We've called the cops." A pause. Then a chuckle. "Good. They'll want to see what's under your porch." Harper froze. "What did you?" Before she could finish, headlights swept across the yard, a police cruiser pulling in. 2 officers stepped out. Relief hit like air after drowning. One of them, Officer Danner, called out, "Everything okay here?" Harper nearly cried. "He's outside somewhere." He said. They scanned the property, flashlight slicing through the dark. No movement. No Victor. Danner crouched by the porch. "Could you come take a look at this?" Lillian stepped closer, shaking. There, under the lattice of the porch, lay a small metal box, half buried in dirt. Danner reached in carefully and pulled it out. Inside was an old Polaroid camera and a stack of developed photos. All of Lillian. Sleeping. Working. Driving. Dozens of angles. Some printed so recently they were still damp. The officer exhaled slowly. "We'll take these in. Keep your doors locked tonight." They left at 10:03 p.m. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. 10:30 p.m. Harper double-checked every window. When she returned to the living room, her mother was gone. "Mom." The back door was cracked open, cold air drifting through. On the counter, next to the still-warm kettle, lay a note written in careful cursive. "He said it ends if I see him. I have to see him." Harper grabbed the flashlight and ran into the night. She found her mother standing barefoot in the yard, wearing her nightgown, staring toward the trees. At first Harper thought she was alone, until she saw movement behind the shed. Victor Crane stepped into the moonlight. No disguise, no mask. Just that soft, unsettling smile. "Evening, Harper," he said. "I wanted to give her closure." Harper raised the bat. "You need to leave right now." He tilted his head, almost kindly. "I already did. You just haven't noticed yet." He took one step forward. Harper swung, the bat cracked through the air, striking his shoulder. He staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he laughed, a short, broken sound. "Always the protector. Just like your father." Lillian's voice broke behind her. "Victor, stop." He looked at her then, eyes glinting. "That's all I wanted. To hear my name." For a moment, no one moved. Then, from down the street, sirens wailed. The blue lights turned the whole neighborhood into a strobe of panic. Victor dropped to his knees, hands behind his head. The arrest was quick, clean, procedural. Trespassing, stalking, violation of restraining order. The officers cuffed him, reciting rights. As they led him to the cruiser, he called over his shoulder. "Lillian, you never called. I waited 38 years." The door slammed. The car drove off into the dark. For weeks, peace held. The police found a hidden bunker beneath Victor's property, walls lined with photographs spanning decades. Lillian's face in every decade. And one more, Harper, age 5, holding her mother's hand at a fair. Inside a drawer were hundreds of St. Patrick's Day postcards, blank, green, each stamped but unsent. Lillian fainted when she saw them. Time dulled the edges. Victor was sentenced to psychiatric custody. Harper returned to Columbus. Lillian tried to rebuild her routine, open the bakery, wipe the counters, measure sugar and silence in equal parts. But she couldn't bring herself to bake cinnamon twists anymore. They reminded her of him. 1 year later, on March 17th, the first postcard arrived. No return address. No handwriting, just printed words in plain font. Still green. Still waiting. She burned it in the sink, watched the ashes swirl down the drain. Told no one. But every year since, another one comes. Always on the 17th. Always with the same message. Last night, Harper called as usual. "How are you feeling, Mom?" Lillian smiled faintly. "Fine. Busy. You know me." She didn't mention the envelope sitting on the counter, or the faint smell of cigar smoke lingering by the door. After the call ended, she looked again at the return label this year. Typed neatly, but she saw it immediately, the address was hers. At midnight, she sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling, staring at the postcard's green border. A faint sound drifted through the open window, the bell over the bakery door jingling once in the wind. Or maybe not wind. Somewhere outside, footsteps paused in the gravel. A man's voice, faint, cracked with age, whispered. "You never called." The bell chimed again. And Lillian realized the sound wasn't coming from the bakery anymore. It was inside the house. Epilogue. Police later ruled her death a heart failure brought on by stress. The official report listed no signs of forced entry. But when Harper came to close the bakery, she found a new postcard taped to the counter. No stamp. No date. Just 3 words typed in green ink. "Still waiting, Harper."